Mornye is now available, and not only does she have one of the best character designs in the game, she also marks the debut of a new meta for support characters, being one of the most meta-defining characters recently released. But what is her kit about? How do you build her? What teams do you use and how to play them? What's this tech I'm talking about in the title? I'll cover all of that in this video in full detail using my special power called Math. Let's get started with her kit and explain her rotation in the process. Mornye's kit is essentially separated in two distinct phases, unenhanced state and enhanced state, which is called wide field observation mode, but like who cares. Unenhanced state will only ever be used during her first rotation, the opener rotation. After that, you'll only be using enhanced state because intro directly allows you to start there. On enhanced state, when Mornye has to go through it, will be really simple. You literally just want to use 3 basic attacks or parry an enemy attack with her skill, but you won't be using that because not only is it slow, the enemy typically won't attack you before you attack them. So you do 3 basic attacks, that fills your forte gauge, you hold basic again, and then boom, you enter enhanced state. At that point, Mornye is in the air constantly, and if you swap out, you have to redo the entire process we just talked about all over again. So when you enter enhanced state, you just don't swap out of her until you have your outro. And to build it, you have to access new basic attacks and a new skill. You want to use both. To fill her forte gauge, you do 3 basics into skill and you got it. Her dodge counter is the exact same as her basic too, so if you have to dodge, it's no big deal, but just account for that. Once your forte is full, you can do a special heavy attack, and for that you just hold basic while your skill is casting. After that, you can do your ultimate and you swap out. That's literally what her kit is about. Her rotation is basically set in stone, but there are a few ways to optimize it, which I'll cover in a second. But first, to understand that, we need to have more of an analysis. So since Mornye is a buffer, what does she actually buff? Let's do a recap. First, when you enter enhanced state, Mornye generates a field that provides increased interruption resistance to all allies, constant healing to whoever is active, and makes Tune Break on enemies accumulate 50% faster. If you use her ultimate when the field is summoned, you also get even more healing and 20% defense on top of that. This will be up permanently in a fight, realistically. Second, when you cast her skill, you get an effect which either prevents you from taking damage over 30% of your HP, so a one-shot resist up to 3 times, or you get a death resist, so any fatal attack, you won't die from it. And all uses of this buff have expired. Mornye also heals the active character by a lot. This stuff is only once per battle though, since the cooldown is really long and it only lasts for a minute anyways. Third, once you cast your special heavy attack at the end of your rotation, Mornye will apply a mark on the enemies, and that mark can give an extra 40% damage bonus, but only when the enemy is affected by Tune Rupture or Strain, and then Tune Break damage is dealt to them. So in other words, when their Tune Break gauge is fully whimpering, or when you cast the Tune Break skill actively in Tower and Matrix. This only lasts 8 seconds at S0 though, so the uptime is pretty short outside of whimpering, and the buff will not activate without the proper applier, and the only one we currently have in the game is Lene. Finally, her outro and echo set provide 25% all-type damage amplification, which is just really strong, and 25% attack, which is all-team-wide, and realistically those ones will be up permanently in the fight. That's essentially her kit, however, you can optimize her rotations a bit better than that. So let's cover her normal rotation again. First, you either intro into her or you do 3 basics and a heavy attack. I'll show an intro here because it's easier. Then you enter enhanced state. At that point, you can do 3 basics, but pause. You see when Mornye starts casting that attack right there? Yeah, so even if you interrupt it with anything, it's still gonna cast. That means you can use your skill right there and it saves a ton of time. After that, you can cast your heavy. When it hit the enemy, you ult, you outro. Depending on your build, echo timing will change a little bit, but we cover that later in the echo section. You might think that's the tech I'm talking about in the title, but it's actually not. Watch this. See how fast that was? And I still got my concerto. But how did I get enough? Well, you see, if your concerto weapon, so Discord or her signature, is a high enough rank, in this case it's rank 4 at minimum, you can actually skip doing her heavy attack entirely. So the rotation is gonna look like intro, 3 basics, watch out for the basic cancel timing, then you skill. As soon as you see your forte bar go up, you use ult, echo, then outro. Now, that sucks if you have Lene in the team or if you have S1, because then you're missing out on a ton of buffs from her marker. But if you're at S0 and you don't have Lene in your team or any future Tune Rupture / Strain Applier, you can just skip out on it entirely because it does like no damage and provides no buffs. And you save almost 2 full seconds like that. Like, look at this frame data, bro. Mornye can get faster than Shorekeeper in some teams. It's to that extent. And you'll see this is very practically useful. However, you can also see that if you don't have a concerto weapon at all, not only can you not do this, you also have to add extra basics at the end of your rotation, so that kinda sucks. But for those of you who have a high enough rank concerto weapon, you're in luck because this tech is gonna help you a lot, so do learn it if you can make use of it. The only really unfortunate part is that this tech doesn't work at all during her first rotation, so the opener rotation, but other than that, it's totally worth your time. So now that we've covered her rotations, what do you do when it comes to echoes? Well, her build either has her running 5-piece Halo of Starry Radiance with the Reactor Husk, which is her dedicated set, or you can run 5-piece Rejuvenating Glow with the Fallacy of No Return for essentially the same team buffs. The only differences you have are energy generation and some small amount of damage from the Echo and buffer time. Still, I would build Halo of Starry Radiance if you can. For stats, since her ultimate, which is most of her damage, scales off of defense and energy regen, and her marker's buff also scales off of ER, you want a 4-3-3-1-1 setup with defense, ER, defense, defense. You really don't need to worry about a healing bonus forecast, because Mornye gives you all the one-shot resistance, death resistance, and healing in the world. Going for extra is overkill. For substats, her priority goes like this. Energy regen until 260%, which is where she caps out. And to make her hit harder, you want liberation damage bonus, over crit damage, over defense percent, over crit rate until 20%, over attack percent, over flat defense, over flat attack. In terms of what stats to aim for, you really only need the 260% ER. Other than that, you can aim for these stats if you want to optimize her for damage. This is a really good quality endgame build as portrayed by Pridwin where I do the theory crafting, but again, important reminder, Mornye is a support, you really don't need to go that far for her. In terms of skill priority, you can always prioritize passives first, and then you level her ultimate, forte, basic, intro, and skill in that order. Though you can level the skill before the basics and intro if you want more heals, and you in fact just don't have to level anything too high except just the ultimate. Before I tackle her weapons, this is a small reminder for you to subscribe if you haven't yet. In case you want to keep up with my videos and support me, that's just the best way to do it. Plus, it's free and you can unsubscribe whenever, so please consider it. Now for weapons. Mornye is really easy since you only have 3 options. Here are all the calculations for you. Mornye is really good and very much sufficient on Discord, which is her best 4-star. Her signature is ideal, but rather skippable since the team damage increase is, as you can see, pretty low. And finally, if you lack any other options, Broadblade 41 is the only other Broadblade in the game that gives energy regen. But it can allow you to get to the 260% requirement if you need it, since it's craftable. It's much worse than the other options, however, since when you use this weapon, you lack the concerto for a smooth rotation, and you need 2 extra enhanced basics after your ultimate before using your outro. When it comes to sequences, Mornye is a bit peculiar though. Her S1 actually makes her marker damage bonus uptime go from 8 seconds to 20 seconds, so it's essentially up permanently. It also completely removes her dependence on a Tune Rupture / Strain Applier to benefit from it, and it also gives you more interruption resistance than you'll ever need. Her S2 gives extra crit damage and off-tune build-up rate to the team. Those are good team buffs, but frankly, they're nothing insane. Her S3 shortens her rotation, where you don't need to do any enhanced basics anymore. This is nice to have, but it also costs a lot, so generally it's not worth it. Her S4 and S5 are essentially useless because they're really bad in terms of team damage increase. And finally, her S6 is a huge increase to her ultimate's nuke, and it also makes her have full energy at the start of any fight. This is still a really niche sequence though, and it overall doesn't offer too much of an increase for team damage. So here's what you can expect in terms of calculations. As you can see, it depends on whether or not Lene is in the team. Without Linné, which is currently our only Tune Rupture / Strain Applier, the value of the S1 skyrockets. This is really relevant because she essentially becomes Shorekeeper 2 with this sequence, so that's just her best sequence overall. If you're gonna go for any, I would go for S1, but no, this is far from necessary for her to be top tier. If you want a general recap of everything I just said without many details, here's an infographic. Credits to my goat Calist online for this, by the way. Finally, for her teams, Mornye has 2 main meta niches right now, where she absolutely dominates. One of those is alongside Linné. You can put those two together with just about anybody you want, but the characters who benefit the most from them will be any liberation damage dealer, so the most ideal partner with them is Yuno. I'll cover that team's rotation. You want to start with Mornye's opener rotation. When you get an intro, you can skip the 3 basics into a heavy attack, as I'm doing here. Past that point, you can use your 3 basic attacks, cancel the last one as it's starting to be cast, ideally as soon as the attack starts forming around the enemy here, with her skill. Then, you can hold basic during the skill, that gets off your heavy attack. After that, once you see the concerto fill up, you cast ultimate, you cast your echo, and you swap out. If you have Fallacy with Rejuvenating Glow though, make sure to cast that before her ultimate. Then, Linné wants to do an intro into her ultimate, into her skill, then you fully charge her heavy attack, she lunges at the enemy, you can cast her echo whenever you want. When you see the 2 concerto ticks, you start doing your 3 jump attacks, finally you plunge down, and that gets you your outro. After that, Yuno will cast her intro. You can cast her echo whenever you want. You then want to use a skill and another jump attack. This lets you do 3 basics with your bow into a skill. When it shoots the projectiles, you cancel that with your ultimate. The projectiles are going to hit the enemy during the animation. Once that's over, you do 3 more basics, into 1 more skill, into 3 more basics. Finally, you swap out and repeat that all over again. Another team where Mornye is meta is in the Monofusion Hypercarry. The ideal teammates are Galbrenna, Lupa, and Mornye, but you can also replace Galbrenna with Brand or Encore. You start off with Mornye as normal. I already detailed the rotation, so I'll skim over it. You literally do the same thing that I already covered with Yuno and Linné, except if you have R4 plus Discord, you can do the tech we covered earlier in the video on the 2nd rotation onwards. For Lupa, she does an intro, it won't be enhanced on the 1st rotation, but it will be afterwards. Then you can immediately go into her ultimate, and you just press basic until you see the skill button glow, at which point you spam that, and when you get your concerto up to full, you can outro into Galbrenna. At that point, Galbrenna does her intro, and then she can do a few heavy attacks, you dash cancel the 3rd heavy 2 times. Once her forte is filled up, you can use her skill into her ultimate. After that, just spam basics, dash cancel the 3rd at this window, then the 5th at exactly this window. Just do that basic chain twice, and when you did your last basic 5, you can swap out and repeat the rotation. Mornye is also a universal support, who is roughly equivalent if not better than Zarina in most teams in the game. This holds a lot of value since you can just slot Mornye in any non-negative status team, and she's gonna put in the work that you need her to do. But ideally, she remains best used with Linné and Lupa, otherwise in her role you just rather use Shorekeeper, at least until you get Mornye S1. That being said, I'll conclude the video with a few gameplay clips of me using Mornye in a couple of teams to show you how other full team rotations can work. I hope you enjoyed this video, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and yeah, Mornye is hot, bye!